Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Art Side of Life, where it's all about how you can turn your creative passion into a profession. My name is Eva, and my guest today is a contemporary pop surrealist artist and illustrator from Queensland, Australia. Graduating with an illustration degree and a Bachelor of Education, she has been working in the field of art education since 2000. Her research into fairy tales and classic children's literature became the focus for her artworks during her illustration degree, and to this day has become inspiration for her work. Her paintings are usually mixed media works looking into relationship of graphite, gouache, ink, colored pencil, and watercolor. And she loves to explore the medium of oil painting in her larger scale works. So please welcome Rachel Favelle and let's get to the interview. So please welcome Rachel.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Hi. So I would like to start a bit at the beginning. How you got to art, and did you always knew that you want to be an artist?
Okay, well, I started doing art at a very young age. So I was exposed to a lot of oil painting and pastels and very traditional forms of art because my mum was really into visual art when I was a kid. She does a little bit now, but not very much, but very much inspired by her at an early age. And then I suppose in primary school at an early age, I was sort of the student that was picked out to demonstrate to other students how to draw or paint something, and I felt it was something that I could do and that I was capable at. And so I just really had a passion for it at an early age, and my mum would take me to watercolor workshops and things like that. And then as I grew up, I sort of always knew that I wanted to do something in the art field. So I went up and did a Bachelor of Illustration at Griffith Uni in Queensland, here where I live.
Yeah.
And so that was about 3 years, and I focused mainly, I think, specialising mainly in sculptural sort of illustration.
Okay.
So I used to do, you know how they do anime and they do all these little sculptural sort of figures?
Yeah.
I used to sort of do these little sculptural scenes, illustrating things. And I really got pushed into that area. And then when I left uni, I sort of thought, you know, what am I going to do? So I went from there and I did a Bachelor of Education. So I became an art teacher in high schools.
In high
and I've been teaching in high schools, for 17 years now.
Yeah, because I read that it's from 2000 already, right? So it's
long. Feeling a bit old now.
Wow, so cool.
Yeah, so and then I suppose, you know, being an art teacher for so long, I really stopped doing art for a period of time after I finished university. Part of the reason was because a lot of my lecturers were very you get critiqued a lot and very critical of your work, and I sort of developed a insecurity about art making. So I could teach it, but I wasn't necessarily doing it myself, which was a shame. And then it got to a stage in my art teaching, I was like, I need to have that own passion for myself to be a good art teacher. And so I think it was probably about 10 years ago, I came across a book by Joe Sorin. Have you heard of him?
No, I haven't read that. No,
he's a really famous American pop surrealist.
Yeah.
And I came across one of his books in an art gallery, and I just fell in love with that particular style.
Okay.
And so from that stage, I was like, I want to paint and create my style, but in a pop surrealist style. And so I've been painting in that style ever since. And then I think I probably didn't take the whole sort of professionalism of art very seriously up until probably I turned 40, which was a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And I really thought, it's time to make, you know, sort of a stand in terms of really focus on doing this properly.
So do you think the biggest turning points or these biggest decisions to take the art seriously was when you found that book on that exhibition?
I think that's when I really felt like I fitted somewhere. Because before my lecturers were saying, you need to do sculptural sort of stuff. And I was like, no, I really love painting and drawing and that sort of medium. But I really, you know, I didn't really find myself until I found that book. And then from then on, I've just been researching a lot of other pop surrealists, and I've got a big network of pop surrealists that I follow now that help inspire me in my creative making.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, wow, that's really cool because it's always really nice when you found this spot where you kind of like, oh, maybe I can belong here, and then you find the inspiration. I think it's really cool. And when you talked about your mom, and do you think she was the main inspiration you got to art, or did you have other mentors?
I think my husband has become a mentor for me in a strange sort of way. He's also an art teacher. We met at school,
Oh,
teaching high school students, and he does a lot of like loose impressionistic sort of landscapes and seascapes.
mhm.
So we sort of feed off each other. So he's always very motivated, encouraging, and always sort of promoting me to other people. Um, but he's got a really good eye for art. So often before I started painting, he'll come upstairs and say, oh, that's wrong with it. Can you change it? And then I'll be like, oh, great. Okay. I'll get all these sort of mistakes out of the way before I start painting. So he's become a really good support to me. I've also recently met another Australian pop surrealist called Mari Larkin. And I met her at an exhibition recently. And I said, oh, I love your work. And we started talking, and she's given me a lot of guidance. Like we've had a couple of phone conversations where she's just, giving me her knowledge. She's a little bit further along this path than I am in terms of marketing and promoting herself. And she's given me some really sound advice. So I think it's been helpful to sort of network with other artists and have connections that way to help me along my way.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, because we are always influenced by other people around us. And if you have someone you can get inspired by or strive to become them, kind of, then it always helps. So that's really good advice. And what do you think, what was the best advice and worst advice what you ever received in your art career?
I think the best advice was making connections and relationships with people, because art, it's not something that's essential. It's not like need to survive. It's a luxury, and so the best way to connect with buyers and also connect with other artists is to have good relationships. So to make networks and to connect with people. And the other bit of advice I was given that was very good was don't be afraid of failure. That it's okay for it not to succeed, just to have a go, and you haven't lost anything by having a go and trying.
Yeah,
In terms of, sorry.
no, nothing. I was just thinking that, yeah, it's always good to learn from the mistakes or the failures because I had the same feeling. So, yeah.
And I think the worst advice was listening to negative comments about what I can't do. Like people say, oh, you can't make a living from art. That's sort of a pipe dream, or, negative comments about my artwork or my style of art making. Sometimes I need to take on board and think, okay, with a critical eye, can I improve?
hmm
But it shouldn't impact upon my self-worth as an artist.
Yeah, 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 for sure. What I wanted to ask as a next question was, how would you define your brand? Because you said you are inspired by fairy tales or what I read online as well. And is there a vision or mission which goes through your work, like everything what you do?
I think I really focus on artwork that promotes sort of positive and light-hearted atmosphere, because there's so much darkness in our world and so much serious sort of turmoil in our world that I really want to focus on doing things that are a little bit quirky, a little bit light-hearted. I do take and draw from a lot of my own childhood experiences. I also have two children, one's
Yeah.
3 and one's 6, and so constantly being surrounded by children all the time, I sort of take things from their childhood as well.
Yeah.
And also elements in terms of fairy tales. I did a lot of research when I was doing my illustration degree, and looking at things from fairy tales from not only also, I suppose, European background, but from different cultures. I really want to sort of delve into that a little bit more. But I just really want to make things positive and lighthearted and give people joy from my art.
That's really nice. I really like that. That's super cool. And so now, if someone would want to do something what you do now and also positively inspire other people, where do you think they should start? Like maybe recommend some medium, what you use now or what you used back then? Because it can be overwhelming when you go to art store and like there is so much choice.
Yeah. Yes, it's hard. The things I'd probably tell people to do is probably start with a workshop first.
Hmm.
Start for things like if because I teach students regularly and I say to them, like, you can't be good at everything. You can't be great at, some people are, but some people, you really need to specialise. So you need to think what brings you joy. So do you love drawing? Do you love photography? Do you love filmmaking?
Yeah.
What is it that inspires you and drives you? And then do a few workshops. It doesn't have to be a university degree.
Yeah.
They teach you some skills, but, you can go and find these things yourself, even go on YouTube.
Yeah.
So really get a little bit of training so that you can develop your skills to begin with. And then I always tell my students that you need to really submerge yourself in the art experience. So you need to be constantly researching. So whether that's getting on Pinterest or following artists on Instagram, going to galleries regularly, so that you can develop your own voice and your own style. Because you shouldn't really be copying something exactly, but you can steal a mixture of ideas and mix those up to create your own artwork. So you need to be constantly exposed to art to develop that. The other things that I'd say is to practice your craft every day. So every night I will go to my studio sometimes between 3 and 4 hours and do art while my kids are in bed because that's the only time I have available to me.
Yeah.
So making sure you practice every day. So if you want to be a good musician, then you've got to practice your instruments, just like practicing an instrument or riding a bike, you need to do it regularly. And the last thing is making sure that you get regular honest feedback. And not necessarily showing it to your friends and saying, oh, what do you think of my art? And they say, oh, it's wonderful, amazing. No, you want some critical, honest feedback so that you can develop and grow as an artist. In terms of media, years ago I used to use really, really terrible paintbrushes, cheap canvases. I used to use some really cheap acrylics as well. And my husband would say to me, you've got to stop doing that. You've got to invest some money in some decent materials, because it actually helps you painting. So now I use water-based oils. They're Winsor & Newton brand, and they're just it's a really good paint because you don't have that smelliness that you get with a regular oil paint. You don't need to use terps, but it still has that slow drying time that's nice and thick and glossy that you would have with oil paint. So I've found that medium really works for me rather than acrylics that dry so easy. And because I've got to stop and start with kids all the time, it's easier for me to have something that's slow drying. So I would really encourage people to invest in some quality some paints. And if oil paint's too expensive, maybe start with watercolor, get some decent watercolor paints and start experimenting with those, because it just makes the process that much easier.
Yeah, it is easier for sure, because when I tried as well, like better brands or kind of better pigmentation in the art, it just makes your work so much easier, and then you feel also more confident. So for sure.
Yes.
And how long did you wait it until you bought the proper brands or like better quality tools from the time maybe you started?
Well, I think it's when I was at university, like I'd sort of just use anything available because I was a poor student. But I think when I really started getting serious about what I was doing, so I found the water-based oils 10 years ago when, I first came across that artist's work, and I really thought, okay, I want to start developing my style. And I've been using them for about 10 years now. Just so that I become more experienced with that media. I do other things still, like I like to diversify, and sometimes I'll do some drawing, sometimes I'll do some collage and mixed media work, just to keep things fresh, because sometimes you do need a break from using the same materials all the time, and you need to experiment and explore as well. So I think it's helpful to change once in a while, but always to keep developing and improving.
So you use this refreshment for the motivation, like if you feel stuck? Because I read, Yeah, I just read in your profile that you said as well when you finish a drawing, then you can feel more empty and how to keep the motivation going. So, is this one of the techniques you use to not feel stuck and just continue with your work?
Yes, I think experimenting does help, and not just, I suppose, staying in the one spot. Like even with my painting, I look back at my paintings from last year and sort of think, oh, I can really see the flaws in those paintings. And I see I've progressed a long way. So I think, yeah, it's sort of always experimenting and challenging yourself. Other things I do to keep motivated is I will listen to a lot of podcasts. So
Yeah.
I think sometimes, because art is sort of a very solitary and very still sort of condition where you know, sitting in one spot and you're painting or drawing for hours and hours. So sometimes I just need to get out, go for a run, put my earphones in, I go and listen to some podcasts. A couple of podcasts I listen to is Artists Helping Artists,
Okay.
and Pencil Kings is another one I listen to. They're both from America.
Yeah.
But they just help me keep motivated and focused on what I'm trying to do, and they give me ideas about how I might overcome some problems.
Yeah, yeah. I love podcasts as well. And I listen to Debbie Millman with Design Matters. I don't know if you
Ah,
heard that
no,
one.
I haven't.
That one is really good as well because she's also interviewing a lot of different artists from different backgrounds. So, and I listen to it when I travel, usually in a public transportation or when I'm not driving.
Mm.
So, actually, just to fill in time. So, that's quite cool. And when you talked about the art studio, did you just move there or do you also have it for a long time? And I also like read when I did the research that you sometimes see owls. So, is it far away from your house or do you have to travel to your studio or how did you find it?
Okay, I will. I always have it in my house because I have to work at night. I always think, oh, it's easier for me not to waste time and go and travel to a studio space, and it's cheaper. So I always have my studios in my house, and they're not far from my kids' bedrooms. But we've just moved house about probably 5 or 6 months ago. And the last house we were was sort of like a tree house. So you'd
Oh,
see all sort of, you know, nature and things straight out your window. So we had like huge pythons sitting in the
oh,
tree, and then you'd see possums and koalas and things like that. But where we are now, we don't have any of these lovely creatures. We have the occasional bat. So that's not really going to be inspiration of my work. But yeah, it's sort of a different environment. But my studio is basically just a sort of a bedroom in between my two kids' bedrooms, just for my art, obviously. And then I've got an area where I do my oil painting, my larger canvases, and then I have a desk where I do my drawing and filing and things like that.
yeah. Ah, cool. Yeah, I mean, it's really good that you don't have to travel to the studio, so you can use all your time. And how
Yes.
do you design your day or a week? Because when you have two kids, then you are also teaching, you also do exhibitions, right? And all of these
Yeah.
things. So how do you split your time?
Well, I've learned to be more time efficient since being a mum. Before I had kids, I would waste so much time. I'd sit down and watch TV, I'd procrastinate and just waste so much time. And I think now that I don't have time, I'm more time efficient, if that makes sense. So I will use things where I just really map out what I'm going to do with my week.
Hmm.
And I always know that once my kids are in bed, then I have 3 or 4 hours where I focus on doing my art and not to get distracted. So I don't, get in there and sit in my studio and watch TV or something like
Yeah.
that. So I just make sure that it's always usually my nighttime ritual, and I find it quite relaxing to go to my studio. Like I know a lot of people sit and watch TV or they play games to unwind, but art for me is my sort of relaxation time.
Yeah.
So where I can be by myself and into a quiet space. So it's usually night times, maybe occasional night where I, give it a break, just because I'm too tired or
Yeah.
fall asleep on the bed or something like that. But yeah, it's usually it's night times that I do it. I'm working part time at the moment, so it does take a little bit of pressure off all the other things that I've got to do in the week. So yeah, that
Yes.
does help.
So you plan ahead like a week. Like for example, on Sunday you do kind of like graph plan for the whole week. When do you do when and these kind of things.
Yeah, so I sort of look at where my end goals are. So, like at the moment, like one of my goals this year was to enter as many exhibitions as I can within the year.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I sort of, did my sort of research at the beginning of the year to find out when those exhibitions are,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'd work back from that and I'd say, okay, this is going to be done now. How long do I need for that painting to dry and photograph it and get it completed,
Okay.
ready to be sent off? So yeah, I sort of work backwards from a due date.
And with the exhibitions, do you contact them yourself, or do you have an agent? Or do you think everyone needs to have an agent to do exhibitions?
No, I don't necessarily think, like, if you're starting out, like, I'm still at that sort of emerging phase. I wouldn't just call myself, like, I'm not quite there yet, but I don't think everyone needs an agent when they're starting. I think it's just a matter of networking with people. I've got an exhibition coming up next week where it's a group of art educators. And so I know the person that's curating that because I used to go to university with them.
Okay.
So that's good. And then I've got one later in the year. It's called Hide and Seek, and it's at Wesville Gallery in Tamworth. And it's Mari Larkin, who I mentioned before, who I met at an exhibition that she was in, and she invited me to exhibit with her. So there's a whole lot of pop surrealists, not only from Australia but internationally, that will be exhibiting there. So it's just about sort of networking with people and putting yourself out there, going into a gallery and saying, here's my work, or emailing them, and seeing if you're getting any responses.
Yeah. Oh, it's really good tip, because like if someone can just imagine, because it can look quite abstract, like, oh, I just have an exhibition, and like, how do you get there? Who do you need to contact? And all of this information. And the exhibition you just had now, the Kindred, right? If I'm correct?
That's on at the moment.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what are the other exciting projects which are upcoming, or something which you are the most excited right now about work?
I've got sort of probably in the final stages. My husband and I are actually working on illustrating a children's book together.
Oh, cool.
So we're basing it on a bear that has a sort of a wild imagination. His imagination gets him into trouble. So it's these series of events which end up in disasters, and his mum increasingly gets angry at him, but then she forgives him in the end. So it's a very short book, but we're sort of hoping that this might lead into other children's books in the future. So that's something that we're looking forward to completing.
Oh, so cool.
Hopefully this year.
Congrats on that. Oh, I'm really excited to see that. So nice. So basically, when you do so many things, right, you, I guess you are also selling art, right, or online, then you are teaching, then you do other things around, right? You want to do the book. So what is your main income source, or how do you combine your income streams?
Okay, so at the moment, my main income is coming from high school teaching, and I'm trying to find other ways to, other than just selling paintings, a way to raise an income. And one of those ways is looking at selling prints and possibly merchandise. So I have some limited edition prints that I sell. And that's a good way, because there's only so many hours in your day and so many days in a year that you can physically paint. So you need to sort of think of other ways to market your work that's not you physically having to sit there at an easel and painting. So I found that that's sort of been helpful as a way of gaining income. But not restricting yourself, I suppose, saying I can only produce this particular art. Like, I have done CD designs before. So thinking about where can my art be, not just on a canvas, but thinking in other ways that that you can present your art. Not just your art.
And when you have more projects, as you said, like you have only limited time, how do you decide what to say yes and no to?
Okay, good question. I think it comes down to what your goals are. So I usually think about my goals for the year, and then you sort of break those down into smaller goals within 3 or 4 months. Where do I want to be? And so for me, like, I get people contact me on about commissions, and sometimes I need to think about, okay, can I fit that in with my goal? So my goals for this year was looking at how many exhibitions I could be involved in. Whereas other years I've done, I think last year I did mostly commissions, like people just contact me for commissions. So I just need to think about, okay, you know, is that fitting in with what I can actually physically do
Yeah.
and what my goal is? Yeah.
Ah, okay. Yeah, yeah, because I think it's really good to think about the end goal in mind. Like if you want to become, for example, animator, and if you take one commission and then if that project takes you to your goal. So yeah, so really good tip. And I would like to also know, like, what was your worst career moment so far? Or how did you overcome
Okay.
it? And maybe what is the key takeover from it?
Okay. I think one of my worst experiences was, I think about 2 or 3 years ago, and I went into, I emailed a gallery first, and I said, would you be interested in showing my work? And she said, oh, you know, very interested, would you come in and bring some paintings with you? And I did bring in several paintings. And she gave me this really hard critique, and it was sort of like the painting's too flat, hasn't got enough volume in it. Perhaps maybe you shouldn't paint on canvas, maybe you should just do flat paintings on wood in a small scale. So she was quite harsh with her comments, and didn't really give much positive feedback. And so I went away from that thinking, well, maybe I'm not really built for this, maybe I should stop producing art. And I really questioned myself. And then I had a discussion with my husband in the car, and you know, that was around about the time when I was sort of turning 40, and he says, well, how seriously are you taking this, you know, and what are you willing to overcome in this experience? And I sort of had to take a step back, and I've used that experience for the better now, because I've realised that negative experiences you can learn from. So this experience, which I found difficult, I've actually thought, okay, well, there's some truth to what she's saying. Maybe my paintings are too flat, or maybe I need to think about using light better and volume better and using my colours in a different way, and stretching myself rather than just relying on my skills at this present time.
Yeah.
And I often talk to my students in high school about that, because we often do critiques as a class, and I say it's not to make you feel bad, it's to help improve what you do. So I always think, okay, bad experiences are always there for learning experiences.
Yeah.
And then you get to pick the positives out of that.
Yeah, I think that's really important take from this, because also some kids are freaking out if it is too late to start with the art career. And also you didn't start with your art career when you are like 15 or 20. And so I think that's really good to know that it's never to start too late with your passion, and just continue. And also to learn to take the feedback, because also for me it was really hard when I started to take feedback on my art, and I'm like, really? Oh, okay. But then you can just move forward and learn. So that's amazing. Yeah. And
Yeah, it's important.
is there something which you would wish you known before you started your art career? Kind of like advice to young yourself, or...
If I had to talk to my 20-year-old self, I would say don't waste time. I just spent a lot of time thinking, oh, you know, I'll do it later, or you know, doing all sort of, you know, like, as I was saying, you know, watching too much television and things like that. I just think I could have done so much more, you know, starting in my 20s if I'd really managed my time effectively. And there's really no excuse. Like, I have students come to me and they go, oh, I don't have any time. I said, well, try working and having 2 young children, then you don't have time. So I just sort of think it's important just to think, you know, make goals and stick to them, be accountable to them, have someone that makes you accountable, and yeah, just really manage your time effectively, and not doubt yourself so much. Don't be so afraid. I think that's what, you know, I've been fearful
Yeah.
of people criticising me or not making it, and I just think, well, it doesn't matter, just do it anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And when you said also you don't watch movies, but you said you read books or maybe documentaries, what would be your favorite book or documentary or movie you maybe watch over or read over or give as a present?
Okay. Well, I really, because my background's in illustration, I really love children's picture books. And so I'm a big fan of Sean Tan, and also Oliver Jeffers, because they create children's books that are meant for children, but they also can be for adults. depths,
Yeah.
and they are a lot deeper than the surface level, and they're very, very gifted in what they do in terms of, I suppose, illustrating a story, a visual. So yeah, those sorts of books like The Arrival. Have you seen that one?
And no, not yet, not yet. But I know the name, but I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, so it's a whole children's book, but it does not have any words in the whole book.
Yeah.
So it's like it's quite a thick book. But I really like that, and I also like. I'm really hard to pick one thing, but in terms of films, I really love Tim Burton's films.
Yeah.
They're really quirky and just a bit out there. So
Yeah. They are always like super creative with this. And do you have some product or service you bought maybe this year or ever which simplifies your life?
It's going to sound very archaic, but buying a paper calendar where I can map out and visually see, like, even though I have things, like my phone, my iPhone and things like that, I just find a paper calendar is really good because I can map out the whole year. I can see it all in front of me.
Yeah.
I found that's been really helpful this year, just in terms of my goals. Another thing is just having good equipment to photograph my paintings. So having good SLR camera, using Adobe Bridge and Photoshop to make sure that my images have got good resolution and they're clear, and then I can use them, and like I haven't sold the painting and then I don't have the image there later on. So just having that as knowing how to use those devices has sort of really saved me a lot of hassle and a lot of time.
Yeah, for sure. And as I don't want to hold you too long, I would like to end with some questions about the future. And I would like to ask you about, for example, imagine in 5 years, where would you imagine yourself to be if you cannot fail? Like, what would you do? Anything?
I think I'd really like to have, a series of children's books available that really do promote sort of positive values and that are very strong artistically. So I'd like to do that. I also probably like to get more into the international art market as well. So, approaching galleries in the United States about, exhibiting my work there, because I've done a lot of sort of things locally and within Australia, haven't really focused on that aspect yet. So I think within 5 years, I'd like to be, showing my work in other countries.
Yeah, it's so cool. I mean, I'm sure like when we like launch all these interviews, when you publish, and then it will be more audience, and I'm sure there will be more people to discover you and see your amazing work. And also, I would like to know, like, what would you like to be remembered for maybe in 100 years? What is your ultimate goal?
I think that was the hardest question, like, of all you've probably asked tonight is what do you want to be remembered as, in 100 years' time? But I think just bringing joy and positivity to people through my art, and I suppose being encouraging to people as well. So because art is so much more than just a frangipani painting on a wall. Like it does have meaning and it does impact people. Like I had a commission a number of years ago, and people often say, "Oh, why do you have one big eye and one small eye in your paintings? This is a bit freaky." And I said, "Oh, I don't know. It's just a style thing. I didn't really have a reason." And I had a painting in a gallery down in Byron Bay, and there was a young girl who came in, and she had a condition where she was blind in one eye, and that eye was physically smaller than the other one. And she really connected to my painting. And she said to her parents, "Can she please paint me?" And I was really impacted by that. And so she was very specific. She wanted her dog and she wanted a backpack with these particular flowers and wanted a particular likeness to her. So I think art doesn't have to appeal to every single person, but for some people it really, really impacts them and is special to them.
Yeah, that's amazing message, because I mean, like we are always happy if someone like likes our art or if it is impacted or inspired to create more. So That's amazing. Yeah, yeah. And do you have any last advice or kind of parting guidance for others?
I came across a quote recently from one of the podcasts I was listening to, and it said, "Artists cannot fail. Is success just to be one?" And
Yeah.
I think that's really important to keep in mind, not to compare yourself to other people. That just enjoy the experience and enjoy the journey of creating art.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. And thank you so much for being here. It was such a pleasure. And
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
and thank you guys for listening or watching. And don't forget to inspire one another. And see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and let me know in comments. Also, please subscribe to my channel for more videos because I post new interview every single workday. You can also find the resources mentioned in this episode at artsideoflife.com. Just type a guest name in the search bar. There is also a little freebie waiting for you, so go check it out. If you want to listen to the interviews on the go, make sure to check out the podcast episodes at artsideoflife.com/podcast. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and don't forget to inspire each other. I will see you guys in the next episode.